Morning, everyone. We are convening the Committee on Labor and Government Relations. It is Tuesday, January 31st, 2023, about 9:03 a.m. in conference room 309. First up on the agenda, we have HB 57 relating to workers' compensation. We have one testifier today, the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations in person.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, and honorable members of the Labor and Government Operations Committee. We stand on our testimony in support of this measure that allows the department the discretion to consider the wages of those in comparable employment for volunteer firefighters and other volunteer occupations in determining worker compensation benefits. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
All right, thank you. That's all the testifiers we have signed up. Anyone else here to testify in person? Okay, if not, members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to HB 161 relating to collective bargaining. I just want to make a note that please try to keep your testimony to 2 minutes. I'll give you a warning to summarize if you're reaching that point, but just out of courtesy to the other testifiers testifying. All right, HB 161 relating to collective bargaining. First up, we have Deherd testifying in person.
Hi, good morning, Chair, Vice Chair. I'm Brenna Hashimoto. I'm the acting chief negotiator. I'm here on behalf of the Office of Collective Bargaining, and I'm here to stand on my testimony in opposition of this measure, primarily because this bill diminishes the governor's authority by compelling him to appoint a single individual identified by the exclusive representatives as the labor representative on the Hawaii Labor Relations Board. Currently, the board, the governor has the option to select one of 3 individuals submitted by mutual agreement of all the labor unions. We believe that there's no compelling reason to limit the pool of nominees from 3 to 1. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the Department of Budget and Finance with comments. I was told they were going to be here. Department of Budget and Finance. All right. Next up, we have Kamakana Kamula.
Sure, you can
in support.
Testimony in support.
Okay, thanks, Kam. Next up, we have Randy Pereira in support.
Steve Tevis for HT, and we stand in strong support, and we believe that it should be the bargaining units that pick their representative and disagree with Deherd's position.
Okay, thank you. That's all the testifiers we have signed up today. Anyone else here to testify in person or online? All right, seeing none, members, any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to HB 168 relating to public works. First up, we have DLIR in support. Okay, thank you. And testifier, sorry, because there are people on Zoom, if you could come to the mic to make any statements so that everyone can hear you, and for YouTube as well. All right, next up we have General Contractors Association of Hawaii with comments.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett. The General Contractors Association stands on its written testimony providing comments. My only concern at this point is the ability of DLIR to actually enforce this measure.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the Operating Engineers Industry Stabilization Fund in support.
Steve Tevis for the Stabilization Fund, stand on our testimony in support.
Okay, thank you. That's all the testifiers we have signed up today. Anyone else here to testify on this measure in person or online? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to HB 491 relating to a leave grant program. First up, we have DBED in person, or sorry, with comments.
Chair, Vice Chair, DBED will stand on its written testimony offering comments.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have the AG's office with comments. Oh, in person.
Yeah. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Deputy Attorney General Elise Ame-Mia. We appreciate the opportunity to offer comments. Article 7, Section 4 of the Constitution requires that any grants be made pursuant to standards provided by law. And so I think we've been initially we did not see that the bill contained any standards, and so we've been in contact actually with Representative Lamosaw's office and have been working with them. I understand that criteria has been added to the bill, but I am available to work with the committee or with Representative Lamosaw's office and provide any assistance and support. And I'm available for questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all the testifiers we have signed up to testify today. Anyone else here to testify on this measure in person or online? Okay, members, before I ask for questions on this bill, the intent is to defer this measure about a week to next week Tuesday to vote, to give Representative Lamasaw time to fix the bill. But are there any other questions on this measure? Yes,
Yes,
Rep.
Chair.
Capella.
My question is for DBED.
Flaw.
Hi, thank you for being here. Is DBED the right department to oversee this grant program that's called for in this bill, since DLIR typically oversees labor programs?
That's a good question. I don't know if anybody is here from Labor and Industrial Relations would like to comment on that. We sort of have seen this. We do other sort of grant programs, but it is labor related, and so we would actually want to cooperate with them in any sort of workforce development.
Okay. Chair, if I may ask one more follow-up?
Sure, but let's let DLIR respond if they'd like to first. If you'd like to. If you're still working on it, don't worry about it. Okay, Rep. Capella?
Okay, thank you. Would this grant program cause any future problems for implementation for a more comprehensive paid sick or family leave program? Especially if paid family leave were based on like a social insurance model.
Right. My question would probably work with the AG's office too, with Elise there, just to find out what the original intent of this is, because some companies, might get the grant, but then there might be competitors that don't have it. So one employer is able to offer better benefits. You're creating a little bit of a putting your thumb on, what the market in terms of labor. It might be better to try to have something a little more comprehensive where, all employers, it's, for equity's sake, but.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, any other questions? Yeah, Rep. Tapp.
I have a question for Attorney General's office.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. So in this bill, it says that it gives preference to nonprofit organizations. Are nonprofit organizations considered small businesses?
Not necessarily, right? Because I think that there is a definition for small business, so I'm not sure. Sorry, so I should not. I'm not, and I don't have an answer to your question. I probably have to research it a bit and get back to you.
So my follow-up question is going to be, so let's say like a nonprofit were to apply for this grant and they get preference, but this nonprofit has a lot of money versus a small business who only has about 5 employees and actually needs the grant and they get passed on.
Right.
But in this case, let's say DBED decides to side with a small business and give them the grant and that nonprofit misses out. Does this open any kind of lawsuit based on the bill's current format that it gives preference to nonprofits if that nonprofit were not to receive that grant money?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I apologize. I wouldn't be able to answer that question right here. If I could follow up in an email if you would like.
Okay, yeah, that's all.
Members, any other questions on HB 491? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to HB 536, relating to procurement. Okay. First up, we have DCCA in opposition.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The DCCA, I'm Nadine Ondo. I'm the current director of the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and we have submitted testimony in opposition to the bill and stand on our testimony, but are available for questions and comments.
Okay, next up we have the State Procurement Office with comments. Should be on Zoom. State Procurement Office? Can they hear us?
Hello?
Hi. Can you turn your video on?
Let's see. Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, and members of the committee. My name is Carrie-Ann Sasaki, testifying on behalf of Acting Administrator of the State Procurement Office, Bonnie Kahakui. The State Procurement Office stands on its testimony.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have General Contractors Association with comments.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett. General Contractors Association stand on its written testimony, providing comments. We just asked for one amendment that the Procurement Policy Board be the agency that determines the rules for this, as we believe they have the right expertise to handle that.
Okay, thank you. And we do have late testimony from Department of Transportation in opposition. Is there someone from DOT here to speak?
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Tammy Lee, the Acting Deputy Director for the Department of Transportation. We stand on our written testimony in opposition, and I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lastly, we have Associated Builders and Contractors Hawaii Chapter in opposition. Should be on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. ABC Hawaii stands on its written testimony in opposition. We're available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify in person or on Zoom on this measure? Okay, seeing none. Members, any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to HB 563. Relating to permitted interactions. First up, we have OIP in opposition. Should be on Zoom. Cheryl, you're muted.
Okay. Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Cheryl Kakazu Park, Director of OIP, and we oppose this bill because the provision that they seek to amend, the provisions that they seek to add to 92-2.5 would actually prevent other agencies from attending conferences, professional conferences, but would allow the county councils to circumvent the safeguards that are already in place and that already allow them to do what they would like to do under this bill. Because back in 2014, the legislature responded to the county council's concerns that the Sunshine Law did not allow them to attend community meetings, especially on Maui, where everyone is elected at large, and more than a quorum of the council members would have wanted to attend various community meetings. So we worked with everyone and came up with the guest meeting provisions that are actually found in HRS 92-3.1B. This is a special limited meeting provision where the councils are not required to have to provide a notice that they're going, but they don't have to include an agenda because oftentimes the agenda is not theirs. They're attending a community meeting. And there's no requirement to take testimony. But we included safeguards in that provision so that no limited meetings could take place outside of Hawaii. There could be only one such meeting per community group per month, and no decisions could be made at the meeting. And the regular limited meeting provisions also applied, such as requiring videotaping of the meeting unless that requirement was waived by the OIP director. So these provisions have already been in place since 2014. And although the counties were supposed to be providing annual reports on how they're being used or any problems, we haven't seen anything. So we would oppose changing the law in the manner that they're requesting, and I'll be available for questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Alice Lee from the Maui County Council in support. Michelle, no? No, Alice Lee. Alice Lee, online, in person, should be on Zoom. That is too bad. I wanted to ask her a couple of questions. We have no one else signed up to testify on this measure. Anyone else here in person or on Zoom to testify on HB 563? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? Okay, I've got one for OIP. Thank you for your testimony. I appreciate your written comments on this as well. Did you have a chance to see the Maui County Council's testimony in support?
I just briefly saw it just before the meeting. It sounds like they want to do what they're already allowed to do under the guest meeting provisions of 92-2.1.
I agree. It does seem like that. I guess my question is, have they at any point asked OIP for permission to do this and OIP has turned them down? Because I know, according to statute, OIP needs to approve of that first. Has OIP been the bottleneck at all?
I don't think so. I can't recall ever turning down something like this. Excuse me.
Okay. Thank you. Members, any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to HB 565, relating to state self-insurance against property and casualty risks. First up, the only person who signed up to testify, we've got Dags with comments.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, members of the committee. DAG stands on its written testimony with comments. Available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? All right, seeing none, members, any questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to HB 38, relating to non-general funds. First up, we have Deherd in support.
Good morning again, Brenna Hashimoto. I'm here in my capacity as Director of Deherd, and we're in support of this measure. We'll stand on our written testimony.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else here to testify on HB 38? Okay, seeing none, members, any questions? A real exciting one. All right, moving on. HB 83, relating to workers' compensation. First up, we've got the AG's office with comments. Should be on Zoom. Oh, in person. Okay.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Tue Jan, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I am Deputy Attorney General Carissa Goto, and we have several comments regarding this bill. First, the procedures proposed in subsections D and E appear to conflict with HRS section 386-73, which provides that the Director of Labor has original jurisdiction over controversies under Chapter 386. So therefore, we recommend that the Director hear the disputes first, and our written testimony includes some recommended amendments to maintain consistency with established procedures in Chapter 386. Also, the procedure proposed in subsection C does not allow for the Director's review of the dispute following the issuance of the final written determination by the insurer. And so to avoid creating a different procedure for only one type of issue, and to maintain consistency with the established procedures in Chapter 386, we recommend including a provision allowing for the Director's review. We've also identified some language in the bill which we believe would benefit from some clarification in order to allow the practitioners and also the Director and the Board to know what's expected of them. Thank you. I'll be available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have DLIR in opposition.
Aloha, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, and committee members. Jade Butay for DLIR. The department opposes this measure as both the statutes and admin rules in the medical fee schedule rules already provide a process for disputing provider bills. Furthermore, the measure creates ambiguities in the process used to resolve billing disputes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And last up, we've got the Hawaii Insurers Council in opposition. Should be by Zoom.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, and members of the Committee on Labor and Government Operations. My name is Malia Leong, and I am Vice President of Claims and Medical Management Services at Hawaii Employers Mutual Insurance Company. I am testifying today on behalf of Hawaii Insurers Council. The Hawaii Insurers Council is a nonprofit trade association of property and casualty insurance companies licensed to do business in Hawaii. Member companies underwrite approximately 40% of all property and casualty insurance premiums in the state. Hawaii Insurers Council opposes this bill. The bill appears to impose a very complex process on medical payments, but also imposes different timelines on employers and providers with shorter times for the employers. The bill does not apply to government employees and only to private sector employees. These provisions are inherently unfair and would not provide a better process than what exists today. Currently, payments for medical services are outlined under Section 1215.94, the Hawaii State Medical Fee Schedule. The provisions in this bill would replace that process with one that would create chaos. Today, the billing dispute process encourages parties to negotiate and work towards agreement. We believe that this bill imposes a process which is more complicated and unfair on its face with different timelines and applications, depending on whether one is a government worker or not. The bill would lessen the negotiation process between parties and unnecessarily burden the director with decisions and potential hearings, which adds cost delays and does not benefit the injured worker. Finally, the complex and uneven timelines create additional burdens for both providers and employers, which again does nothing to benefit the injured worker. This creates more paperwork for both parties, which exacerbates the lack of medical providers willing to take on workers' compensation injuries. The paperwork load and complex process is a major deterrent cited by providers for not wanting to treat injured workers today. We ask that this bill be held. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? You see none. Members, any questions on this measure? All right, let's move on to HB 103, relating to the employees' retirement system. First up, we've got ERS in opposition.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, and members of the committee. I'm Thomas Williams, the Executive Director of the Employees Retirement System, and we wish to stand on our written testimony in opposition to the bill. We've been working very closely with the employers for a number of years with an intensifying effect over the last couple of years. It is imperative that we achieve technical and legal compliance with these employer reporting requirements for a variety of reasons. Most important amongst them is the protections of the ERS tax-exempt status. We have no intention of imposing the penalties that are afforded in current statute so long as reasonable progress is being made toward compliance. And as I suggested, there has been a lot of work and progress made to date. A blanket deferral of the compliance requirements for 2 years we think would be inappropriate and equally unnecessary. We ask that the bill be deferred respectfully, and we're available to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have one more testifier signed up. Department of Human Resources, in support.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, members of the committee. I'm Nola Miyazaki, Director of the Department of Human Resources for the City and County of Honolulu. We strongly support this measure. It was introduced as part of the city's package, and we're just here to answer questions and answer any comments, respond to comments.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on HB 103? I see none. Members, any questions? Okay, I've got a question for ERS. So in the testimony you submitted, you said that a second memorandum was issued on November 16th, 2022, providing the requirements and file formats that the departments needed. Is this the final form that they need to put the data in? Is this the final format?
Chair Matayoshi, yes, you referred to the accurate memo. There were memos prior and discussions with employers even prior to that date, but that memo does constitute the final formatting requirements for employer reporting.
And so there's no possibility that that's going to change?
Well, it only changes to the extent that the law changes, because the reporting requirements, for example, that are being imposed today were brought about by the changes made to the retirement system that precluded certain compensation from inclusion. Prior to June 30th of 2012, pretty much all pay was reportable for retirement benefit purposes. With the Tier 2 in benefits, it changed what was reportable to eliminate overtime, bonuses, lump sum payments, and the like. So we required employers to break that information out in order for us to comply with the law. There are no legislative changes that we are aware of in the works. To the extent none are made, then this is the final. But we changed this in response to legislative requirements, not for technical reasons internal.
Okay, because I got to say, I've gotten a lot of complaints from other departments that they've been kind of jerked around a bit by this changing of the formats, that there hasn't been any clear guidance on what form their data needs to be in, and that's why they're rather behind. And there's also testimony, they're not here right now, but I think it was from another county saying that they would need a fairly significant amount of time in order to get their data in this format. What have you been hearing from the other counties or other agencies that need to submit their data?
Well, pardon me, Chair. Again, we've been having significant conversations with all, and we've been having these conversations for a number of years. And because of payroll systems that are in place, oftentimes that don't comply with these reporting requirements, no progress has been made at some employers. They would have to procure reporting systems or new payroll systems in order to comply. And of course, we are not involved in that process nor control it. We are responsible for reporting those requirements, and we've done that explicitly. I apologize to the extent that there's been some uncertainty as to requirements, but they certainly are not requirements as to this format. I think there have been questions as to what pay is reportable, because there are the changes that took place in 2012. Employers are treating those different pay types differently. So some are reporting allowances that are no longer permitted under statute and other types of payments. And we are clarifying for those employers what precisely is reportable and what is not. But the format itself has not been changing. These actual technical formats have been in place for quite some time. It's what needs to be incorporated into the reporting that's been clarified.
And that's my problem, though. I mean, even if we have the final format, if there is confusion on what kind of data should or shouldn't be included, then the proper entities they still don't have the information needed to actually give you anything, right? Because they're not sure what to put in yet.
Well,
so when will that be solidified?
Chair, I believe the information necessary to report to us correctly has been provided in all those respects.
Okay, and then if we were to amend this to, instead of from 2 years down to 1 year, what would be any kind of ill effects that might cause?
Well, that's certainly the legislature's prerogative. The reason we're pursuing this is because our IRS tax status requires that we administer this plan equitably and equally amongst all members. And when payroll is being reported inaccurately, it is impossible to meet those tax requirements. So longer term, it's important that we do comply, and we intend to work with employers until they do. And I know this procurement process can be protracted, and the imposition of penalties is not in any of our interests. We don't want monies to be provided to us in a lump sum because our reporting requirements require that it be broken out in pay periods.
Okay, thank you.
So
Has the IRS or any other federal agency or any other agency come after you, and are they trying to pressure you to do this faster?
not as yet, but we've
Okay.
had counsel to advise us that the current approach violates IRS requirements. So
Okay,
we're
but
trying,
IRS is
we're
not-
trying to avoid the IRS coming after us.
That's fair, but the IRS has not contacted you as of yet.
No.
Okay. I would like Department of Human Resources, the city, to respond, if especially if you have the kind of information that you need to complete this task or not.
Chair, I'd like to call up our branch chief, Jenny Tobin, to respond to that.
Okay.
Hello, and I'm so sorry. The question was if.
Whether you have the
if we
information
have-
necessary to complete this.
Yeah. The situation that we have is that we have some of the information that is necessary, but there are changes that occur as we go along with the testing process and the back and forth that occurs as we're going through this process. So as late as last week Friday, we had a meeting with the ERS, and some of the information that they had reviewed for our test files, they said that they needed to have it done in a different way. And for us and our IT people, it kind of caught them off guard. Our vendor had responded even at that meeting that, this is going to require significant effort. We might not be able to meet that June 30 deadline. So that's where we're concerned. And we're very heartened by the ERS indicating, as they have in the past, that they're not wishing to impose the penalty. We're just not sure how they don't do that if it's the law.
Okay, thank you. Members,
Okay.
any other questions? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to HB 143, relating to the Reduced Ignition Propensity Cigarette Program. First up, we have Hawaii State Fire Council in support.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, members of the committee. I am Gary Lem, testifying on behalf of Kasua Todd for the State Fire Council. We stand on our written testimony in support of this measure and available for comments or questions.
Yeah, thank you. Next up, AG's office with comments.
Good morning, Chair Matayoshi, Vice Chair Garrett, and members of the committee. My name is Adam Rosenberg, and I'm a Deputy Attorney General. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We have provided comments because the current functions of the State Fire Council do not include the functions proposed in the bill. Additionally, it is unclear if the additional personnel noted in the bill are new or existing personnel, and it is unclear whether the personnel should be hired with or without regard to Chapters 76 and 89. Excuse me. Finally, if these personnel are additional, they should be added to Section 132.18. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions on this measure? Yeah, I'm sorry, anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the last bill on the agenda, HB 146, relating to the State Fire Council. First up, we have the Hawaii State Fire Council in support.
Yes, Gary Lem for the State Fire Council, again, in support of this measure, available for questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. We have two people from DLNR in support, but I'm assuming only one of them will be testifying. Don or Michael? Okay.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Michael Walker, Fire Protection Forester for Division of Forestry and Wildlife, Department of Land and Natural Resources. We stand in strong support for the bill, and I'm available for comments or questions.
Okay. Do you know if Don Chang is going to be testifying as well?
I don't believe so.
Okay. For DLNR, if you guys, this always happens, you could just put one testifier, otherwise it lists everyone
Yes, sir.
down here. Thank you. Anyone else here to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll recess for decision making. Recess. Okay, reconvening the Committee on Labor and Government Operations. It is still Tuesday, January 31st, 2023, in conference room 309. Members, the first item on the agenda, HB 57 relating to workers' compensation. We will be defecting the date and inserting a savings clause, affecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Any questions or any comments? Okay, if not, Vice Chair with the vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members, the recommendation is to pass HB 57 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Capella?
Aye.
Representative Martinez?
Aye.
Representative Sayama?
Aye.
Representative Tam?
Aye.
And Representative Alcos?
Aye.
Chair, your measure is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Next up, HB 161 relating to collective bargaining. We'll be passing this one on with a defective date, June 30th, 3000. Members, any comments? Okay, Vice Chair with the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, we're now voting on HB 161, noting the presence of all members. Would any members like to vote nay? Anyone voting with reservations? Chair, all members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we've got HB 168 relating to public works. Chair's recommendation is to defect the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any comments? Okay, Vice Chair with the vote.
Thank you, Chair. House Bill 168, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Again, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? All members vote aye. Chair, your measure is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we've got HB 491. This one had quite a bit of interesting testimony. We're going to defer decision-making until a later date to allow the bill introducer to work on amendments. I know that she has already been working with the AG's office. There are certain other concerns and issues brought up in testimony that I'd like her to address, but we'll be deferring this as of now. HB 536 relating to procurement. We will be deferring this one indefinitely. I did vet this through the Department of Justice twice, and they said it was fine, but we've got the subcontractors don't seem to want it anymore, and I'm not going to fight that for nothing. So deferring this one indefinitely. HB 563 relating to permitted interactions. We are also going to be deferring this one indefinitely. OIP's testimony was convincing. It seems like everything brought up by the County Council, by Maui County Council, was addressed already in statute. And if OIP is not denying them the right to do this, then I think they've at least got to try to exercise their rights under the statute before coming to us for another fix. HB 565 relating to state self-insurance against property and casualty risks. We are going to be, Chair's recommendation is to defect the date to June 30th, 3000. We'll be noting in the committee report that there is a report due September 2023 regarding this. So if we do pass this at a later time, I am recommending that the effective date should be set to July 1st, 2024 to allow this report to be considered by the legislature. Members, any comments? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 565, again noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? Thank you. All members vote aye. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to HB 38 relating to non-general funds. We're just going to defect the date, June 30th, 3000. Members, any comments? Okay, Vice Chair with the vote.
Thank you. Recommendation is to pass House Bill 38 with amendments. Again, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? All members vote aye. Your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to HB 83 relating to workers' compensation. There was quite a bit of negative testimony on this. I think this bill needs quite a bit more work. I'm going to go circle around and see if we can address some of the issues, but if not, we're going to be deferring this to a later date. We may be voting on it next week, Tuesday, but whether we vote on it will be determined on whether we can address and clear up some of these issues. Moving on to HB 103 relating to the employees' retirement system. Chair's recommendation is to increase the time to 1 year instead of 2 years. There looks like there has been some confusion on whether ERS has given the counties and other agencies enough defined data for them to actually start the work on this. So I'm really encouraging ERS to talk to the various stakeholders to make sure that they have all the information they need and that there's no confusion in this matter. So we're going to be changing it again from 2 years to 1 year. Members, any comments? Okay, not Vice Chair, the vote.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 103. The recommendation is to pass with amendments. Again, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations?
Sorry, we're going to defect the date on that one too. June 30th, 2000.
Thank you. Again, we'll just start from the beginning. House Bill 103, HD1. Noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? All members vote aye. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Next up, HB 143, relating to the Reduced Ignition Propensity Cigarette Program. We'll be defecting the date, June 30th, 2000, some technical amendments for clarity and consistency. We're also going to be adopting one of the AG's amendments to amend HRS 132-16, which is the State Fire Council statute, to give them the power and authority to expend the funds in the manner consistent with subsection C of this bill. There are other concerns brought up by the AGs as to whether the positions being created are possibly new or so on and so forth. I'm just going to note this in the committee report for the next committee to look into when it gets there. Members, any comments? Okay. Vice Chair with the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 143. The recommendation is to pass with amendments. Again, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? All members vote aye. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. Last bill on the agenda, HB 146, relating to the State Fire Council. We're just going to be defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any comments? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair with the vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members voting on House Bill 146. The recommendation is to pass with amendments, noting the presence of all members. Anyone voting nay? Anyone voting with reservations? All members vote aye. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. We are adjourned.